All right, as people are coming in, I'm just going to get started, and you guys can all catch up online if you missed anything. This is going to be streamed on Facebook, and then we'll have it online on our website in about a day. So we're using the microphones not for projection, so let us know if you can't hear us in the back. We're using the microphones for our Zoom participants, so that Zoom and Facebook has audio, so that we're not missing any speakers. That's just the situation we got going on. So thank you all for attending. I'm Marcus Flores, the founder and executive director of the Parkville Living Center. We have these town hall forums about once a quarter. We've had our last town hall forum was in September. So that was our third quarter one, and this is our fourth quarter one-ish. Yeah, I guess it is. So and it worked out where so I'm going to explain a little bit about how we got here today, because it was supposed to be a candidate forum, but as you can see, the candidates are not on stage. Hello, Jamie. quite the right timing. Yeah. No, but yeah. So on August 2nd, the primary elections happened, and it was because this is a polling station, and I am honored to work here. I got to engage with the candidates from the Missouri 12th District House race and the Platte County Commissioner race. And so I engaged with these candidates and communicated that, hey, we're starting a community center. We do town hall forums, and it would be amazing if we can do a candidate forum. And I got agreement from all four candidates on a handshake agreement that day that got me going, got the machine working. And so we started, actually, it was August 10th that I sent out the formal invitation to all of the candidates. All of the candidates then started to accept formally via email over the next 6 days. So by August 16th, we had Jamie accepted, Jamie Johnson running for Missouri House District 12, Scott Fricker running for Platte County Commissioner, John DeFore running for Platte County Commissioner, and Tom Hutzler running for Missouri 12th District Representative. All of those individuals accepted by August 16th. And so we started pumping out promotions for having these 2 race candidate forums. So I apologize if you only saw that flyer and we're expecting to see 4 candidates here today. It was on September 10th, a little less than a month after everyone accepted, that Scott Fricker withdrew from the candidate forum. He's still running for presiding county commissioner, but he sent me an email and explained that he was not willing to share a stage or space with his the other candidate. So so that left us in a pretty strange spot. You know, he cited some social media, and he also cited that his time was better spent knocking on doors and hanging out at the coffee shop where he talks to people. So we had to respect that, but we also had to do something with this forum, with this time. And so it was at that time that I started to engage the League of Women Voters and American Public Square and get some help, get some credibility to run this candidate forum. And American Public Square, well, I'm jumping ahead. Let me rewind a little, I'm sorry. So it was at that time that we brought in American Public Square to discuss their Civility toolkit. And we were going to run the Missouri 12th District Candidate Forum under the American Public Square Civility Toolkit tools and practices. And American Public Square, Claire and Trisha are here, and they'll be talking a little later about that toolkit and what civil discourse looks like from their perspective, because they're doing this stuff all the time, year round. And so I think there's some lessons learned and some experience there that will be helpful for us all to think about and digest. And so on September 10th, when Scott withdrew, we still had Jamie and Tom on the list in American Public Square. However, 5 days ago, Tom Hutzler withdrew, citing that his advisors recommended him to withdraw. And that was a little hard to swallow, a little hard to understand, both from a logistics perspective, but also from a community engagement perspective. And a lot of what we do here at the Living Center is listen and hold space and talk and bring our needs and our resources. That's what we do here. So I was a little confused about why that wasn't going to be able to happen in his eyes. And so we had a discussion that really just kind of left things at he is not coming. And that's that. And so I was forced then to basically scrap both candidate forums and turn this time into a community town hall forum where we talk about civil discourse in general, as well as how we engage with politics on a local level. And, you know, I'm just really blessed that we have experience, we have community, we have a place to have this conversation, because I know I need to hear what people are saying and thinking. And I think it'd be helpful for us all to kind of hold that space where we may not all agree, but we can hold space and be hospitable and be polite, and be brave in what we're saying, because that's what it takes to get through. Hello? I'm sorry. Hello? Okay, hold on one second. Okay, there we go. All right. So jumping all over the place. I was a little bit, derailed just a couple days ago. So I was expecting to have the candidates talk, have American Public Square talk, but instead we're going to have American Public Square, and we're going to hear from the community, and we're going to hear what we feel and what we think about what's happening right now. And I can only hope that this makes its way up to our elected officials, our public servants, because we're all their constituents. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I want to thank you guys for coming up, for showing up, for having this conversation and starting these conversations in a public space, even if the candidates are not presented, but in a way where the community itself can talk and understand and connect where we feel that pull. And like I said, we're all different. And I'll just tell one quick story about differences in diversity, because I come from an environmental policy background. That's where my education is in. And so I learned a long time ago about the intrinsic value of diversity. And I feel strongly that it actually translates to human systems as well as nature systems. But in nature systems, one way where diversity is really seen and obvious, I'll use the potato example, because we used to have hundreds of varieties of potatoes. And so when a disease or a drought came, maybe 5 or 10 of those species of potatoes were affected. But we still had about 100 other, or maybe 150 other potatoes that were resistant. And so that allowed us to continue to eat potatoes in the midst of that drought or the disease. And that's the intrinsic value of diversity, is that it makes us as a whole more resilient. And so when I look out across this audience, I see many different people who have many different perspectives and points of view and experiences, and all of them are needed to make us resilient. And so I value all the different perspectives and experiences, and I hope that we all kind of begin to learn that value and share that value so that we can gain and grow both individually and together. So that was my introduction. And so what we're doing today is we're going to have about a 15-minute presentation from American Public Square. We're going to do a full ballot review. We're going to go through the full ballot and talk to the job descriptions of each of the individuals, and then links to the individuals' platforms. And you'll have all this information is available on the table in the back for you to take home with you if you haven't grabbed it already, along with some other handouts from American Public Square. And so after the American Public Square and ballot review, we're going to move the table up here and we're going to start to field some questions and have a discussion. I've got some questions I want to ask, some topics that have just been ruminating in my heart that I already know how I feel, but I want to know how the community feels. And I think it'll be helpful for us all to hear each other in that time. So I'm going to hand this over now to Claire Bishop, the Executive Director of American Public Square.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you so much, Marcus. Goodness, applause. It's like I'm doing a show or something. This is great to be here with you all tonight. Thank you to the Parkville Living Center, to Marcus for inviting American Public Square to be a part of your community forum. We're really excited to be here. How many in the audience have heard of American Public Square? Okay, great. That was more than I was maybe anticipating. How many of you have attended an APS event? Okay, fantastic. So to those of you who have attended APS events in the past, you probably are familiar with the fact that we bring together diverse perspectives on really contentious, some might call them wicked issues, for civil fact-based conversation. And that's the premise that originally Marcus invited us to participate in tonight's forum, knowing that we'd have candidates on different sides of political issues. And we wanted to keep that conversation really productive and civil and fact-based. So we were here to play that role, to help put up some guardrails to help ensure that that conversation was in fact a civil and a productive one. Well, as Marcus outlined in his illustrative timeline, that plan has changed, right? So we're here with a different mission tonight. And so we've adjusted our presentation, if you will, and the involvement that we'll have accordingly. So I wanted to just share a little bit about the nature of our political system. And this is not going to be a long bit, but just a slight tack on to what Marcus was saying, because as you all heard, we had several candidates who essentially withdrew from the candidate forum, saying that their time was maybe better spent on the campaign trail doing other things. And I think one of the things I have observed, and this is not a trend that's happening only at the Parkville Living Center on Tuesday, October 18th. This is a universal trend. It's happening across the country in the midterm elections and in media and community forums alike. Candidates are finding less reason to actively engage in conversation with their constituents. And it can be really easy as a constituent, as someone who's voting, who feels that you want to have that access and that opportunity to ask questions, to probe on the platform, to understand a little bit better about where your candidates are coming from. You feel like it's a slight maybe to not have that opportunity to engage. And it can also feel like a slight offense, and so it might be easy to say, gosh darn it, these guys, and let's call them Republicans or Democrats or whatever, are refusing to engage with us, and thus they are the bad guys. And I think while that's tempting, we have to understand the incentives that our candidates within the existing political system face in order to run a successful campaign. So while it may feel slightly offensive that the candidates who withdrew from this forum tonight did not choose to be here with us, there's a reason that they're doing that. What is the reason? And the reality of the matter is that our current political system offers perverse incentives for our candidates to run and win successful campaigns. And so we have to understand that. And that's one of the things that I'm so glad to see you all here tonight. And thank you for taking time on a Tuesday evening to engage in this discussion with other members of your community, because it's really important work. And Trisha's going to get into this in just a moment, but it is not just the work of the politicians or the media or the others out there that are not the person that we look at in the mirror every day. It is our job to do everything we can to be informed about the issues and to show up ready and willing to engage in a civil way, in a respectful way. And a lot of times that means listening and listening to people who share different beliefs than your own. And that can be the most difficult thing. And one of the things that we know at American Public Square is that we are becoming less and less practiced at this. And I don't know if it has to do with just the 24-hour news cycle, the emergence and proliferation of social media, but we grown adults like myself, I would consider myself a middle age, and my daughter who's in middle school are all feeling the same effects of that, which are it is becoming less possible, less desirable to sit in a room and engage with people with whom we do not agree. It almost feels like giving up or giving in or giving something away that you should hold on to. But the reality is that we have to engage in those types of conversations in order to find solutions and ways forward, especially on our most complicated or wicked issues. So I'm going to hand it over to Tricia in just a moment, and she's going to go through some exercises that help us understand our own personal involvement. Because I think one of the biggest takeaways for me this evening is it's about what each one of us can do. You know, we can't rely on the candidates to do everything we might want, but we can hold ourselves accountable. So we'll provide some ways that American Public Square uses. We have a very active civic engagement initiative. In addition to doing the community-based programs that we do throughout the community that are free and open to the public, we also have a program that's taking place in high schools across the metro area to help students at the high school level learn to engage in these types of conversations and to really build those skills, build those muscles back up. So I'm excited for you all to learn a little bit more about that from Tricia. One other thing though, I just wanted to say this thing that I'm holding in my hand might be something that you all would want to take away. It is a discussion guide and it was back on the handout table. So if you've got it, fantastic. If not, grab one on your way out. If you choose to go away from this evening out into your own, communities and other places where you might gather at the Thanksgiving Day table or at church or in other community forums or living room conversations, this discussion guide can help you facilitate those difficult conversations. So this is for you to take with you, to take that work out into the community with you. I would also say we've got a sign-up sheet for our newsletter. And I know this week in our newsletter, we're sharing resources from a program that we did earlier in the year. Actually, it was in January of this year. We did a series of programs on the topic of election reform. And so I think really tonight and what Marcus outlined as it relates to the communication between the candidates and that whole evolution of this evening's program really puts a focus on the issues that we have with our political system. So I encourage you, if you're interested in any of those resources, we've got full recordings of the program, along with a very extensive fact sheet that was developed about the electoral process in the United States. And it goes at the national, regional, and local level. So lots of good information there. We've got a couple of podcasts and a couple of programs that are recorded that you can watch if you're interested in diving deeper on that topic. If you want to get access to those, you can sign up to the newsletter. I know that's going out this Thursday in our newsletter, but it's also available on our website, www.aps.org. I'm sorry, .americanpublicsquare.org. So just a shout out to some of those resources that might be of interest as you all are contemplating sort of the state of our candidacy, so to speak. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tricia Maxfield, who heads up our student initiative, our civics education initiative, and she's going to walk through a couple exercises with you.
Thank you, Claire. And thank you, Marcus, for having us. And thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. It's great to be here with an audience. I'm glad.
I'm sorry,
Oh, sorry. I'm glad that Claire used the word exercise because we're going to do a little moving to start out with here tonight. So we're going to play a game called This or That. If you prefer the first option, I want you to stand up. If you prefer the second, I want you to stay seated. First, stand up. Second, stay seated. We're going to start with French fries or onion rings. If you choose French fries, go ahead and stand up. If you're an onion ring fan, stay seated. Okay. I've got some head shakes, some judgment over here on French fries and onion rings. Okay. We're lucky we live in Kansas City. We can go to Winstead's and get a 50-50, right? And get both. So I always remember that. All right, go ahead and have a seat. Are you an early bird? Are you an early bird? Stand up, or are you a night owl? Stay seated. I always get one of these. I always get like somebody, and I say that person is burning the candle. Okay, great job. So we're We're about, I think, more early birds, but just barely. All right, have a seat. We're going to take a vacation together. We're going to hop on a plane. Stand up if you're going to fly, or are you going to hit the open road? Stay seated if you love a road trip. By the way, we're going 12 hours, if that makes a difference. Oh, somebody said, nope, that's it. I'm flying if we're 12 hours for sure. All right. Okay. So we've got more people. I'm riding. I'm doing a road trip. So, okay. Last one. Patrick Mahomes. I'm kidding. Don't let anybody play this game with that example, right? There is nobody else. It's Patrick Mahomes. What was fun about that game? What was appealing? Anybody? What? What was appealing about that game, the whole game? Low stakes. The issues, she means the issues were low stakes. French fries, onion rings. Why is that? Why do you mention that as an appealing facet of the game? Okay, we don't get really emotionally charged up about whether we're a night owl or an early bird. What else made it appealing? So they were low stakes. Could be things you enjoy, right? So if it's something you enjoy, it might be something you want to share, right? I see some head shaking. What else? Anybody else? Oh, two directions. Excellent. Okay, so what's appealing about that game to us as humans, it's in our nature, right? To be curious about our differences, especially if they're low stakes. We're willing and interested to share both our opinion, viewpoint, or perspective, and we're also interested in what yours is, if it's low stakes. Now, what if I rolled in here with this game and I started with firearms or abortion or climate change? What would happen to the game? Somebody said, yikes. Yeah. Why? Why would people be afraid to stand up? Okay, they're afraid of what other people might think and judge them. What else? Oh, okay, a sense of physical danger. Okay. She said, I'd never hurt you. Okay, so that tells me that these are no longer low stakes. These are high stakes topics. And it would have changed our game. People would have been hesitant to play. What else? How else would it have changed our game? Oh, there would be, tell us a little bit more about that. What do you mean there'd be othering? So not only would those issues, those higher stakes issues, have changed what we might have been willing to share in this public space, but it might have changed how we viewed others. And there would have been some choices that people made or revealed that would have made it difficult for us to see them in the same way we did before. Might have been a negative implication after that. All right. Anybody else on these points? Okay. Well, you guys are right where we're at American Public Square. This is the space that we work in. I work with high schoolers and college students on a program to develop these skills, right? Claire mentioned that this may be a time when, as a society, as a country, as a city, as a community, these skills may be lacking, unpolished. What do you do when there's something that you want to improve on? What do you do? What do you do, Marcus? I practice, right? Whether it's my jump shot, ribs on the grill, my yoga pose, I'm going to practice it. And unless you're practicing, right? If you're not, it's going to get stale. It won't improve, it won't evolve, it won't change with the conditions around you. But if you're practicing, it will. So the page that Claire talked about with the conversations has on one side our civility toolkit, which guides all of our programming. And I'm sure Claire's going to come back up and talk about programs that we have next week. So you might put a pin in that. That will help to guide the conversations that we're having next week. On the other side, it has a suggestion to host some of these discussions over what we call wicked topics. That means there's no single solution to the topic. The requirements of it are constantly changing, right? And wicked denotes resistance to change, not evil. It means some parties engaged in it are resistant to change or to solving it because it's just too hard. There's no one single solution and the stakeholders can't get together. So that discussion guide, I mean, I've had people tell me it's going to be out for Thanksgiving table. So, you know, you can use it wherever, whatever groups that you are. I thought before we send you out to have those tough conversations, we might do one last exercise together, and that would be to define civility as a group. So I'm going to go right back to it, Marcus, I promise. And I'm going to pull this up and see if we can I put it
Right there.
right here and you can slide down?
Yes.
That's perfect. Okay. Just as a group, what is civility? How would we define it? Civility is, I like that, mutual respect. Again, two ways. What else? Listening. What else? Treating others how you would like to be treated. What'd you have? Ooh. Okay. Okay. So focus. I like that. Focus on position, not person. Can we say it that way? Focus on position, not person. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Couched in truth, or what role does fact or truth play in it? Absolutely, and thank you for that. Let's see what we've got so far. Civility is, you probably need me to do this over here, Marcus. Civility is mutual respect, listening, the golden rule, focus on position, not person, and truth. Do we feel good about that? What if we were in an elementary classroom? What do you think they would start with if they were trying to teach, this is what civility is? Is there one word or kindness? What was that? Kindness at the same time. Excellent. Kindness. Turn taking. This all sounds very polite. I'm going to add polite. Okay. Anybody else want to add something? This is pretty good. I would say I have one point to make about your definition. Civility is mutual respect, listening, golden rule, focus on position, not person, truth, kindness, turn taking. It's very polite. I feel a little unbalanced about the listening because you didn't add sharing or talking, right? So let's add that and then think about how that might change it. Is civility simply the absence of disagreement? Why do you say no? Okay. Okay. So civility is also accepting differences. If you accept them, that must mean they've been shared, right? So civility is sharing differences and accepting, right? We have a great quote that we use in the material that we work with students from a social scientist, Arthur Brooks. He's an author and social scientist. He's written several books and he writes for The Atlantic. He has a great quote that says, civility is not the absence of disagreement, it's the existence of better disagreement. So we don't need to disagree or agree more or less. We just need to do it better. And you already told me that the way to do anything better is simply to practice it, to put ourselves in those spaces or those opportunities where we can be around people who might challenge our positions, our viewpoint, our life experience, in which then we can have a two-way sharing of differences, a listening and a talking, a golden rule, and the absence of improved civility. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for me before I hand it back over to these two great folks behind me? So I'm going to let Claire speak to that. And as she's getting up here, we have members and funders, and I appreciate the question.
Yes, awesome. Trisha was like, I probably was not expecting that question. Yes, so we are a member organization. So our members provide a good deal of our funding. We're also funded by a number of foundations in the Kansas City metropolitan area. We also receive support from corporations and foundations for the specific programs and topics that we address. And then we receive operational support from William Jewell College. We're formally affiliated with William Jewell. That's where our academic home is. So we've got some operational support there. So our funding is kind of multifaceted. But ultimately we serve the Kansas City community at large. We work to do our programs in multiple locations around the city, across both sides of the state line. And most of our programming, all of our large scale signature events are free and open to the public. And I encourage you to attend them. And on that topic, I will, Trisha did mention, we've got a couple of programs coming up next week. One that we're doing in partnership with the Kansas City Media Collective, which is a group of nonprofit journalism organizations of which we are a part, that's focused on Gen Z and their perceptions about voting leading up to the midterm election. That'll be held at UMKC at Pearson Auditorium on Tuesday, October 25th at 6 p.m. So again, that's free and open to the public. And then we're also hosting a couple of authors in partnership with Rainy Day Books. This is actually one of the rare paid events that we host because we have books that we're selling as a part of it, but we're hosting the co-authors of a book called Courageous Discomfort, how to have life-changing conversations about race and racism in America. So that's taking place at Unity Temple on the Plaza on Thursday, October 27th, also at 6 p.m. Admission is $25. You do get a book and 2 admissions for that price. And those are the big events that we've got coming up through the end of the year. But we are working on our 2023 slate. That's coming up soon. So if you are interested in learning more about APS, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. We do send out information on a monthly basis and would love to share more about what we're doing, but more importantly, have you all participate and join. APS is one way, one of the many ways that you can get involved in what's going on in the community. And there's a place for every single one of you there at our programs.
All right, thank you very much, Claire and Trisha. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to turn on the projector. We're going to go through the ballot and talk about the job descriptions of each of the positions and get familiar with some of the names and faces on our ballot, as well as some of the issues and questions. And I want to give a special shout out to Timmy Tassler. Yes, because Timmy put this presentation together and he put together the links that you'll see on the handout at the handout table. So that page you can take home with you. There's a link, and it is paper, so you got to write it in. But we'll have this available online too. If you don't want to write it in, you can just click. But there's a link to the sample ballot that we're going to be talking about once this fires up. And then as well as all of the candidates' platforms. There's links to all of the candidate platforms as well. So let me get this little thing out of the way. All right. Thank you, Jolene. Oh, super dark in here. All right. Can we turn on one of those in the back, Jolene? Thank you. All right. So as you're probably well aware, we have a general election on November 8th. These are just some general bullet points about our ballot. It's a midterm election, so that's why we're not seeing the governorship up for election. But this slide deck will be available on our website, so you'll be able to click through any of these and visit this at your convenience and leisure. So okay, so to register to vote, that date is passed. So hopefully everyone who wanted to register has registered, or lives in another state perhaps. All right, so this is a polling location. If you don't know your polling location, you can find it at vote.org, polling place locator. You can put in your address and it'll tell you where your polling location is. Probably got that information on your voter registration card as well, but this is just another location to find your polling center. Polls are open for 13 hours on November 8th. So, so hopefully that accommodates most people's times. And this year, we will need a valid, non-expired picture ID as your voter ID, as your ID card in order to vote. So there's just a special call out on that because it needs to be valid and photo ID. There's a couple of exceptions that you can get shared on vote.org or at your polling location, or the Platte County Election Board is very informative, or has a lot of information. So if you call them, they'll be happy to share with you any of those minutia details as well. I'm not going to get into absentee voting. We're going to skip this. It'll be available online for you guys to review and share if you'd like. But what I'd like to really get into is the sample ballot. This is the ballot that you would see if you're a Missouri, if you're voting at this polling location and your address is a non-Kansas City address, then you'll see this ballot here. There's actually a back to it that has some questions, but the front of the ballot looks like this, and it has our candidates and judges, and then the questions and issues are on the back side. So this is everything that's on the ballot. It's a lot of stuff, and it's even kind of hidden there because it's so much, it's spilling off. So what you saw on the front of the ballot and what we're going to go through are the federal legislature, the state legislature, the executive office is down here. If I can get this little thing to go away or not. No, I guess not. But we'll get to the executive office as well as the county positions. The judicial ballot are uncontested positions looking for our vote to remain seated. And so that's what we'll be voting on, is if our if our judges will get to stay in their positions. Much like Claire and Trisha said about practice, I'm getting practice up on this, so I'm not as informed about the judicial side as I hope to be. And so I'm taking this time and this space to get learned up on that myself. So, you know, we all come from different places and have different amounts of times, and that's okay, because you guys have made it out here today, and it sounds like you're willing to listen and share. So there's also the questions that are on the back that I mentioned. There's some constitutional amendments. There's a question about a convention here in Missouri, as well as a couple of other questions that we'll see at a later slide in their entirety. Okay, so what we see here is the federal legislature level on the state Senate side, or I'm sorry, on the US Senate side. And we have their job description to help us understand what senators do. And while we hear the term a lot and see the names a lot, I thought it was really helpful, and I really appreciate, again, I'm going to call out Timmy for putting this together, because that is such a nice way to begin the conversation. What do these people do? What is the task at hand? And so we see that this is an upper chamber position. Here are pictures of our 4 senators that are candidates that are running, and you'll see this on your ballot. And again, the handout that you have, not the American Public Square hard one, but the paper one, has the links to every candidate's platform. So what we're doing here is that sharing piece where we're putting everything out there. And then a little later, we're going to do the listening piece where we start to just soak everything in and hold space for both of those. All right, so if we can keep going, we have 3 individuals for our House of Representatives at the federal level. So these representatives have districts, and Missouri has 8 districts, and we are in the 6th district, and those are our candidates. We'll keep going through these slides just to get an idea of the job descriptions, the titles, and we all see the names on billboards and yard signs. And this way, we can start to understand the people behind them, because I encourage you all to check out the platforms and understand who these candidates are that we're going to be voting into our leadership. All right, so we'll keep going. Yep. State representative, this is the District 12 representatives. Thank you, Jamie, for attending. I appreciate that. And you know, we see there's 163 representatives in Missouri, and our 12th district is what we're going to be voting on here. Each address is associated to a district. And so depending on your polling location, you might be in the 15th district, the 14th district, or the 12th district, I believe are the local ones we have around here, maybe one more. But there's district maps available online, so you can understand the scope of what that district is. But we're not going to cover that today. We're going to keep trucking. All right, so did we skip one? No, okay. So we're also voting for state auditor. State auditor holds the state government financially accountable. So, you know, all of these positions are important. And as Trisha and Claire were saying, what is our role in understanding that, in understanding both the issues and the leadership that we're voting in? So this is just a quick opportunity to see the names so that we can have this discussion about these particular roles and positions available. So we'll keep going. Presiding commissioner, I think John left, but he was here, and appreciate him showing up. The presiding commissioner is a pretty local role, and it's one that I really had no idea about. I knew that we had 3 county commissioners and one was presiding, but it really helps to understand how they all work together and what kind of issues are the responsibility of the Platte County Commissioner. So we're going to be developing with other organizations and the city a kind of a citizens university pathway that will help us to dig deeper into what those roles are. Yes. Thank you so much. I will take you up on that offer. And this is how local politics works, is we get to do it, and then we get to hear about it and enact change and speak to change and govern. So thank you for your service, and thank you for showing up today and being willing to help us. All right. County clerk. So these are some county positions. These are positions that probably affect us the most. They affect our local taxes, our local infrastructure, and the county clerk issues permits and licenses for liquors, tow trucks, auctioneers, and a range of other licenses. So responsible for retrieving requests records under Missouri Sunshine Law. So these are things that we all have an opportunity to touch at some time in our life. And so to me, this was the first time that I got to see the names, and then I'm going to dig a little deeper before November 8th and be ready to not just vote what yard sign is the color I want it to see, but the issue that I have, the issues that I have, and how the different candidates are addressing those. And probably a little oversharing about my tactics, but that's kind of just a little bit about me, and I overshare often too. So next slide. The county auditor, uncontested. So we might probably see Kevin in there again. Okay. And again, these job descriptions are gonna, yeah, we'll keep going. These job descriptions will come out. Record of deeds. I had no idea about this. And there's a little article about why this picture is not on this slide. And you'll see that if you follow the link on the other page. So, you know, record, store, and maintain real estate transactions, marriage licenses, and military discharge documents. So that's well, I know filing things is probably one of my least favorite things to do. I also know it's probably one of my most important things to do, because when I need to find something, it better be where it is. And I get a feeling that this guy's pretty good at that stuff. So I'm still going to visit his platforms, understand who he is and what he's done, and try to be as informed as possible. County collector is another one on the ballot, but she, again, this is another uncontested position. So Sheila was the collector, and looks like is maybe again. All right, so we'll keep going. Prosecuting attorney, another position up. Eric Zahn, again, uncontested in the position as well. So you know, I think we'll have some questions about some of these uncontested positions and the questions and answers. So I'm going to reserve my my comments and questions until then. So if we can keep going. So now we get into the judges, and this one's this one was new to me, and so I've only learned about what I can learn in about 2 weeks about these judge positions, but I'm going to continue that learning. And so basically there's a state level Supreme Court, and we have 2 judges who have reached their end of their term, but can come on again if they're voted to retain in their position. So that's what we're looking. And luckily the Supreme Court is very well documented here in Missouri. So you can understand the positions of these judges if you choose to support their staying in office. And I guess that's all I'm gonna really, that I can say about the Supreme Court judges at this time. So we have the Court of Appeals is set up in a similar office for these judges to retain office. Let's see. Yeah, the Court of Appeals takes up court decisions at the state level that are brought to the appeals court after making it through their first round. So these are important, and these are part of our civic engagement as well. It's not only the glitzy, glamorous positions, but it's all of the positions. So, you know, so being an engaged citizen, you can begin to see how it starts to carry more and more weight. And as what we say here in the Living Center is, sometimes the weight gets too heavy to carry alone, so we come together. And that's what we're trying to do here today, is come together and share and learn as a group. And so I look forward to hearing the questions and answers portion. But again, that's about all I can say about the Court of Appeals. Some more circuit judges. I think you guys have heard all I can say about the judges. So we'll keep going through here. We got now we get to the question. So this is really interesting that that it's a, so what you see on the ballot is that one line, shall there be a convention to revive and amend the Constitution? But what's behind that? What, like, if I just saw that, I'd be like, heck no, or whatever. I'd be whatever I wanted to be. But we see that this happens every 20 years. We see that it can happen whether the legislature wants a change, it goes up for vote, whether the citizenry wants a change, it gets enough signatures and goes up to vote, or every 20 years, this question gets on the ballot. So this is a 20-year question, and it's just our time to answer it. Is it time for us to review the Constitution of Missouri and make amendments, which would get voted on, but do we even start that process? That's what this question is asking. And I think it's a really interesting question. I feel almost like seeing Haley's Comet, seeing this question on the ballot. So, you know, these are some of the back stories behind the things we see where there's always another level, a little bit deeper. And the more we know and can share that information, I think the better we are as a community. Okay, so this is talking about the ways to change the amendment. And then, I'm sorry, the ways to amend or change the Constitution. And then these are the specific issues that are on the ballot right now. To allow the state treasurer to invest in municipal securities, the legalization of marijuana for those above age 21, the increase of minimum amount of funding that can be allocated to police forces, and the separation of the Missouri National Guard from the Missouri Department of Public Safety. Without, taking up another extra lot of time, we're going to present these. We're going to have a couple questions, but this is really just to get us familiar with the questions on the ballot so we can begin to dig into what calls us and what we feel responsible for researching and voting on. There is a transportation tax question as well, which is how it's written here. But thank you, Timmy, for doing a little bit of research and finding the change of that tax rate if we did not renew it. So this is a renewal of the tax, the 1/4% tax. So we've had it in place and it's about to expire, and this becomes our opportunity to keep it in place. Next slide. As I said, these questions are very well laid out on Ballotopia as well as on the Platte County website. You'll be able to find and start to begin to do your research and begin to educate yourself on these positions and individuals on those two websites, as well as all the links that are shared with you. And that is all for the ballot review. And so now we're going to put the table out here, turn on the lights, and field questions for a few more minutes and have some conversation afterwards. But so if you give us 1 minute, I'm going to move the table over, turn on some lights, and then we'll get ready for some questions. Joe, because we'll want the questions to be heard over Zoom, Jolene will be walking around with a microphone. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, wait for her to come around with the microphone, and then ask your question. She'll grab the microphone back. But if the question has more conversation that's needed, I'll ask that we follow that up after the town hall forum. So we allow for all the questions to have time and space tonight. So just 1 second and we'll get ready for some questions. So start thinking about what you want to ask and we'll be ready in just a second.
Yeah. And there should be.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Hey, Timmy,
All right.
can you move the camera, please?
How are you?
All right. So this was the part of the town hall forum that normally would have the candidates up here. But because like we said, we didn't have full representation. We are going to field questions about what you heard tonight, how you may or may not engage with others or with the political process. And so I have some questions to ask the audience, but I really wanted to just open it up for any questions that the audience has, either for me or for American Public Square at this time. And then and we can go from there. Okay.
So I think that being civil in person is pretty second nature and comes easily to most people. But I think we'd be naive if we didn't talk about the role social media plays in all parts of life right now, but especially politics. And that seems to be where a lot of those like benchmarks of civil discourse break down, even from listening or making people can block, people can put questions in so that they are sort of screening who gets in. It's easy to hide behind a screen, make a fake name, make a fake account, just put out any information there at all. So I guess I want some discussion on how do you remain civil online yet be truthful? How do you keep an open forum when I think everybody views their social media as a little bit of a personal space, and we kind of have different rules within our personal space than we would in a public space. So how do we navigate that now and going forward?
That's a great question.
I can start.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. It is a great question. You're absolutely right. And if Alan Katz, our founder at American Public Square, were here tonight, he would talk about the fact that when APS first started, the whole idea was to bring people together in person with one another. And Marcus talked about this a little bit when we first got here. When I first got to the church, I was asking a little bit about the Parkville Living Center and about the history. And he said, when I moved to Parkville, I noticed that there was sort of a breakdown in community. There weren't that many places where the community could just gather, get together, build relationships with one another, learn about each other. We actually at American Public Square last year at our annual fundraising event hosted Robert Putnam, does anyone know who Robert Putnam is? He's author of a book called Bowling Alone. And that title kind of captures everything. He talks about the trends, the societal trends that have our citizens so much less engaged with one another than we ever have been before. And social media plays a huge role in that. Let me address just social media, generally speaking. I think one of the major problems with social media is that it's not really a forum for learning about one another. It could be, I think a lot of people want it to be that, but in practice, it's a place where you get your megaphone and you say what you think, and then to hell with other people and what they think about that, because it is your space, right? If it's on your page or your channel or what have you, then it kind of doesn't, it's not a place for engagement. And in fact, the algorithms that decide what you get to see in your social media are all based on what's going to get reactions out of you. Trisha talked earlier about Arthur Brooks. He's a personal idol of mine. One of the things he talks about is something called the outrage, something he coins the outrage industrial complex. And the media in general are a part of this. It's like, what gets eyeballs, what makes money, what gets, attention? It's the arguments, it's the conflict, it's the incivility. That's what drives this whole machine. So I think the first thing I would say is really, there's no substitute for being in person with one another, being in the same room with each other, being able to look someone in the face. You're absolutely right. That impels us to be more civil just by the very nature of being in the same room with one another. So don't, to the extent that you can substitute in-person engagement and engagement in the community for what you're doing in social channels, I say pick that because it's a better option.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is we hold a technology class here in the Parkville Living Center. And in that class, a a lot of people show up and they're really frustrated with Facebook and they're, how do I get these ads off? How do I see what I want to see? And I got to remind them that Facebook is free and we're on it because we choose to be on it. And we can also choose to not be on it. And I don't mean to dismiss, I'm not dismissing what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that when it stops being fun, then we can remember that there's other spaces to be in. And it's not all about being fun, but when it can be harmful, when it can be dangerous, then we can remember that there's places like this and that there's community spaces to engage people in a more meaningful way all the way around. And so
I guess my concern is that you cannot run any kind of a public campaign, whether it's for a candidate or an issue or anything right now, without a really intense social media presence. Like that, it's naive to think that it could happen. It cannot happen. I mean, like, it's bad. Of course, we know the problem with social media, all of them, they're there. They're all there, but like, I mean, like, what do we do? Like, how do we go forward from here without just becoming more divided? Because we can't always all meet in person. It's gonna be reaching out to people that are too far away.
And I don't really need a mic.
it's for the people on Zoom.
Okay. The problem that I see with social media that is the most frustrating to me, and you brought that up, Jane, is about truth. Truth and facts seem to now be able to be debated. When we grew up, we didn't do that. If somebody told us the grass was green, we believed them that the grass was green. Now we've got people on social media telling us that the grass is purple or red and on fire, and we should all be full of fear. What do we do with that? That's my most frustrating part with social media right now is, when you read the White House Post and some of the comments that people make are just like from a third planet. I mean, how do we as civilized people counter all this misinformation that these people are projecting on social media?
So I just wanted to add, and I think both questions and concerns are urgent, and I think they exist on both sides of the political line. There are folks on both polarized ends that feel that way. So from an academic perspective, I just wanted to offer what American Public Square does with young people. We have heard that this is an urgent call from teachers. I just read in the news today, Illinois is the first state to require a media literacy and media consumption academic requirement in high school. So that becomes part of just like math, English, everything else. So, we're starting to catch on that we need to have space in schools to teach how to interact with the media. And that includes social media. That includes, as you pointed out, you can't be a candidate today. If you said, I'm not going to have a Facebook, I'm not going to have an Instagram, I'm not going to tweet, you just probably couldn't do it, right? So I point that out, and I circle back to what Claire mentioned about Robert Putnam, who's an academic. He wrote the book called Bowling Alone. And the reason he used that title was because he said, he wrote the book in about 2000, and he said, as he had studied over the previous decades, he saw the dissolution of things like bowling leagues, groups, social groups, philanthropic groups, church groups, where people would get together and they would have a common interest, bowling stripes, but you may not agree on your politics and you didn't focus on it, or maybe even talk about it, but you got to be in a space with a common interest with people, working toward a goal. So that movement went somewhere, and a lot of it went online. That his book came out in 2000. Social media increased and came about. So we see that. We know with young people, a lot of them in high school are what we call digital natives. They don't remember a time that there was not Facebook, Instagram, social media, right? So they have grown up in this. So here's what we focus on with them, and perhaps it's helpful in answering this question. Two things that we try to really talk with them about. Number one is proximity. Okay, so if the person in line in front of you at the grocery store is telling you the grass is purple, who cares? Right? It's the person in line in front of you at the grocery store. But if it's your uncle who's going to be at Thanksgiving and you've got some wonderful memories with your uncle, you might want to try and have a conversation. Be curious. Why do you think the grass is purple? What does that mean for us if the grass is purple? Right? Because it might be worth it. You've got proximity to that relationship. The second and more surgical thing that we work with them on is something called lateral reading. So what this means is if you're reading on your computer, you're consuming information, you've got your Facebook page up and you hear something, the grass is purple everywhere. Oh my gosh. What you do is open up a new tab and you Google grass is purple. Who else is commenting on this? Maybe you put in your search some news outlet that's a mainstream outlet, right? That has a lot of eyes on it. We talk with young people, everything you consume and every person you talk to is going to be biased. They have their lens. I see the world only as a middle-aged, unfortunately, white lady who has 2 kids and a fairly cooperative husband and 2 dogs. I'm trained as a school teacher. I work, right? That's my lens. And everybody you encounter is going to have some of that bias, just like every source you consume online. But you can fact check those sources online. You can open up another tab, Google that. Why is the grass purple? Where is it purple? Who's reporting on it? That might take you to another tab. Sometimes when I'm reading an article or somebody posts something, I end up with 10 tabs across the top until I say, okay, maybe this is a breaking news story. Maybe we don't really know the facts yet. Maybe this is being reported and I see 10 reliable, trustworthy news outlets reporting the same thing. Oh my gosh, the grass is purple. This was one guy with a blog from Arizona. I don't know if I can trust this, right? So I would say those 2 things, proximity, lateral reading for young people, and really working with them on the responsibility they have to do their fact checking.
I feel like I don't want to. Yeah.
My question's kind of philosophical. I don't think there's an answer, like we're
Right,
going
right.
to solve the world, but I think that it's just something that's being faced. And I think it kind of goes along too. I was thinking when you were writing down these rules of civility, we can share our differences and accept them, except when your differences like directly affect me in a harmful way. And then I cannot accept that. And I feel like where do we draw the line, or do we ever draw the line from being like civil if I'm not accepting your truth or whatever, because what you want wants to harm me. So I don't know what to do.
No,
Yeah,
it's a great point. And I think you're right. This is a wicked problem. I mean, this is exactly, what we started with. There is no one solution. There's a resistance to resolution. There are many, many stakeholders engaged. I would say one other operational piece that APS relies on, especially when we're working with young people, is exactly kind of what you scratched at there, which is we can, and I have young people, by the way, that ask me this every time we go into the classroom. They say, that's all well and good, but what about when the other side doesn't believe I exist or questions my history, right? Well, that's a tough one. Our commitment to civility means that if somebody we agree with insults somebody we disagree with, we have to side with the person we disagree with. We have to commit to that as part of active civility.
Anybody have a question?
Yeah, right up here.
Have you read I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening by Sarah Stewart Holland and Beth Silvers? It's a guide to grace-filled political conversations. I read that probably a year and a half ago, and it's right up the alley of what you're discussing. And I found it to be a very helpful book for myself to read to
Could you
prepare
repeat that
me.
title?
It's I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening.
Thank you.
And it's two ladies who are on opposite ends of the political spectrum themselves, but they've been friends for life. And they discuss how they go through life, still maintaining their friendship, and how they work that relationship despite those political differences. It's really a good book.
Thank you.
I think they may have a podcast too. I'm familiar with the book. We've got it at the office and they have a great podcast. I don't think they're still producing it, but it would be available, I'm sure, in their archives. Great.
Thank you.
And I think the comment about the book is so fantastic too, because it talks about two people that have continued a friendship through this. So in other words, although they may be on completely opposite sides, they don't view each other as an existential threat to who they are or what they believe. They just view them as somebody who thinks differently, and that allows them to compromise and work together. If we always view the other side as a threat to our very existence, and we tie ourselves and our personhood into our political ideology, that's really tough to swallow then.
You know, and I'll build on that too, because I think something Tricia said a moment ago is really helpful. As you think about what we're talking about here tonight and how it relates to the rest of your life, the proximity piece is really important, because I bet there's not a person in this room that doesn't have someone that you care about, that you love even, that sees some issue somewhat differently than you. So rather than thinking about the person in front of you at the grocery store or the person who's on the totally different end of the political spectrum as you, that it's easy to other and it's easy to kind of say, oh, well, who cares what they think? They're just like a bad person or a different person than me. Find that person that you love and that you care about and probe on those differences. And that's the way to practice the skill, because there's value in it. The reason I came to APS to begin with was because my husband and I were beginning to have these conversations. We've been married for 20 years. It was after the 2016 election that we began to have some uncomfortable conversations in our home. And I was like, my God, who are you? And I have the incentive, because he and I, we have a mutual incentive, love and respect for one another, that motivates us to dig at those kind of thorny issues and to be vulnerable with one another and to listen with love to the answers. And we have plumbed some interesting depths, and we have grown, you know, both of us as people through those conversations. It's really, because if you were to say, no, everyone in my world, in my sphere, they all agree with everything I think. Well, that's kind of problematic too, right? What's going on there? So find the people that you've got points of disagreement with, but you love them anyway. And that gives you all the reason to have some of these conversations in the way that we've been talking about.
I really love the gift of these conversations, because like this is a building of waging peace. This is a place, you know, the work of Civility is waging peace. And then also I work in healthcare, and as I'm a healthcare chaplain, and I have cared for so many folks who have passed in this pandemic. And so the people who are dying from COVID and saying it didn't exist, the mask, the vaccine, the whole thing. And so I also have the emotional labor of dealing with that, of holding their families, the voices I still hear. And I have just plain the anger that it just feels like so many folks are trying to sabotage the process. I love the good faith you're proposing, and yet I feel so just angry that I can't just get through a day. Yeah. Can you hear me all right? Or yeah. It just, yeah, I'm saying like, it just, as much as I love the process and I believe in the process, I also feel so angry that we've got to keep doing this work with folks who are not coming at it with good faith. And I say that from the place of personal privilege that I have. I know my life could be a lot harder. And so I want there to be a question more than a lament, but that's where my heart is beating right now. It's just like, but folks are not meeting halfway, or I don't trust that they will. It's a very emotional, not quite rational response, but if you could just speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
I'd love to answer that, because as you know, and as you can see, I'm not necessarily trained in the disciplines of like communication. And sometimes my biases leak out, and sometimes my anger leaks out, especially over the derailment of this town hall forum. And so this was an amazing opportunity to take frustration, derailment, polarization, and community and find a solution. And that solution is this town hall forum. And so when we get mad, when I get frustrated, there's usually a tiny little crack, some little sliver. And that sliver for me began with American Public Square. It spread to the League of Women Voters. I got an understanding of how to talk to different people in ways that let my frustration and my questions come out. And somehow I was able to hear the plan for this type of event. And so I'm not saying that because I had the idea and this is all great, but in those frustration moments, in those questions, usually we have enough privilege to look around and see somebody to talk to. And sometimes that's the spark that's needed. And that was the spark that was needed to take this very changing forum and to turn it into something that I think is very important and very needed for our community. And so sometimes working through those questions and those angers, it's energy is what that is. When my blood is boiling, which it does, I do something. I got to do something. And this is the outcome of that. And so, and not to play this card again, but the Living Center is this place where we figure these things out. When we get frustrated with anything, when we feel at the angst of anything in our lives, we need community spaces. That's where we come to work things. That's where throughout the course of human history, humans have come together to work out these issues. And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. And so let's remember that and perhaps work through some of that tension together like we're doing tonight. This is incredible for me, at least I can say that. And I hope that this lives on in each of your hearts and minds also, not just knowing some information about the ballot or information about respect, but looking around and seeing, wow, these people care about this stuff and they care about each other. And the people in this room care about hearing from each other. And I think that's critically important and cannot be understated. So I would just, I love that bowling idea, because that articulates so much of what I've seen and felt, that disconnect. And I haven't really been able to put those words to it. And that's what I learned in these places is new words, new sentiments, new perspectives, so that I don't necessarily feel so alone or so angry, because I can talk to somebody who's angry with me and, it spreads out a little bit longer, or maybe we find some action we can do together, even if that's like mowing the grass, going bowling, right? Doing these things that get our minds off of it just enough so that we can find that comfort and that confidence within ourselves to speak our truths. And so thank you for coming here and for speaking that truth. And that's what I've got to say on that.
I would add one more. This is similar to lots of comments that we hear from young people as well. Earlier when I mentioned that making the effort to not see the other side as an existential threat, if you are in healthcare during a pandemic, you may very likely feel like that other side is an existential threat. And that may be a viewpoint that many of us, a perspective that we can't really authentically gain. So thank you for all you did. And, I can't speak to or imagine how difficult those years were. I'm going to offer a quote that I don't offer to minimize what you've said or what you've done. But when young people ask us about this, we usually respond and say, we have never met anyone who has been insulted into agreement. So if you're dealing with somebody who is questioning something you are very heart connected to, or you understand in a very full way, and they have proximity, it's somebody that you're dealing with, that the way to work with them is not going to be the path of insults, but you're going to have to find a different one.
I was very nice, but yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Were there any questions on Zoom that came through?
No, there were not.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we got a question up here. And that slider's on that mic. Yeah, okay.
So I have so much to say, but I'm going to respect the fact that this is not a candidate forum. Okay. No, I think
It's
this
not
is just for
projection,
Zoom.
it's for the folks on Zoom.
I can project.
Okay.
I just don't want to yell into the mic. So I have a lot to say, but I am going to respect the fact that this is not a candidate forum. But the question I have is from a candidate perspective. We talked about social media. We talked about polarizing information and the things that gets headlines and all of those things. And it's very hard to be a candidate that has polarizing information about your opponent and want to launch a campaign or maintain a campaign culture that doesn't have to use that type of information to win, or doesn't want to use that type of information, that wants it to be about the issues and wants it to be about the community, and not get traction because you're not throwing darts. So how do I do that? I'm also a person that likes to interject humor into
Much
to
appreciated.
break the tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that work?
Well, I'm just going to speak from experience of being a candidate myself in Parkville and Platte County.
We give her the
The
mic.
fact is, you're running against
Jolene.
a group that believes that throwing the darts works. And it's been successful for them for a very, very long time. And that's all they know. And they do it throughout the entire country. So that's what you're dealing with. Honestly, they've been very good to you. When I look at what they could do, but I knew when you ran that they wouldn't really know how to deal with you. And so they have been pretty courteous for what they have done in the past. And we'll talk about it. That doesn't need to be here, but anybody that's running for office right now needs a huge hug. Whatever party or whoever they are, they just need a huge hug. It takes a lot of guts to put your name on a ballot today, and then add social media to it, and you've got a firestorm. So I really feel for you and what you're going through. I honestly don't think they know how to deal with you. And they're a little scared of you.
One thing that I'll follow up on that, and I'm just a voice in the community, so I hope other people raise their voices too, because I have no real experience with this except being a person in the community. And what I see and what I tell my daughter, who's 15, and what I hear is that it's hard to say, but what I want to say is that what you're doing and by not throwing darts, it may not help you, but it helps everyone who's watching you, because people are watching you. And that's what I've cued into to be that, like, the waves change slowly over time from a little shake down here. And then over time that shake magnifies. And, you know, I know time is precious, and the things that are threatened seem to be irreversible. And I know that I hold that in me too when I say all of this. But I also know that while the loudest, most outrageous story gets the most hits right now, I know that what gets the most hits over time are the non-dart throwing, heartfelt, compassionate, holistic solutions. And so if a candidate sticks with that, sure, they might get hit and pelted. But what they're doing is showing so many more people that that position is even a real thing, and that we can have that position at the highest levels. And I can't think of a better lesson to learn right now than that people, even in the midst of, I want to say persecution, but that's probably not the right word, but in the midst of being harmed or being defaced, that for those that have ears to hear and eyes to see that kind of stuff. And I know it's the bricks that make me up. It's the ground that I walk on, and it's the community that I'm called to be in. So that's all I can really say. I know it's not hopeful, but that's how I feel. So thank you for raising that question though.
When my last race, somebody took one of the postcards that went around, defaced my face. And the hardest part for me was the little girls in my neighborhood were so upset that I was being bullied. And it was my job to be an adult and to explain to them that they were right, that this was bullying. And so everything you guys are doing in the elementary schools, in the junior high, middle schools and high schools is very, very important, because these kids are listening. And the reason I stay away from all this stuff is because I'm still healing from it. It takes a piece of it.
I'll just add to that. Thank you for sharing, all of you, for sharing yourselves and your experiences and your perspectives tonight. It's been really just heartening, I think, for me, and it sounds like maybe for others, Marcus certainly, and Trisha's nodding to hear that. And it may be time to wind down, but I want to leave you with something that we heard again from Robert Putnam last year. He wrote the book Bowling Alone, but the reason he was at our event because he wrote another book that just came out in 2020 called The Upswing. And that was about how we've been on a downward track, but we can go back up again. And all signs point to the fact that we have done this before, and that it is possible to come together as a community to go toward a better future and to stop going down into the abyss. And we asked, what do you think it would take to make that happen? And he said, what this country needs is a moral awakening. And I think it speaks to everything that's been said in the back, your issues around, healthcare and the issues that we're sharing around throwing darts in a campaign and the hurt that you've experienced in your own campaign. We've got to be the bigger people. We've got to be the change that we want to see in the world. We can't expect or ask of others to do that. We can only ask it of ourselves. But if we can ourselves do that, and enough of us can do that, that's what creates the momentum for positive change. And so that's really, I think at the end of the day, the answer to these things. And it may not be the answer that you want, because in the end, we can't affect what other people do, but we can affect what we do when we look in the mirror. Oh. The Upswing. Oh my gosh.
Oh, my
Great.
goodness.
It's a fabulous book. And Putnam, just in general, his whole career of work is about all the things we're talking about tonight. So definitely recommended reading.
And I would say if they're reading it, our programming is generally always hybrid now. That's a gift of the pandemic. So those live on our YouTube channel and on our website. So the recording of the conversation, there were 2 authors on that book, Shaylee Romney Garrett and Robert Putnam, and their conversation is recorded on our website. So it might be a nice addition to the book club.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up the town hall forum tonight. Thank you all for speaking your truths, your experiences, and for bringing yourselves to this space. This is the kind of thing that we do here at the Living Center all the time. So I really, to be honest, I anticipated hearing a bit more, but with time and with the program, we kind of are already over. And so I just encourage you all to come into this space or find a space like this in your communities and have these conversations. Have your voice heard. And if whatever it takes to build relationships is the start. And so being present, coming together, not knowing what we're going to hear today, but yet being willing to hear it and to speak your truths, our truths. I think this is a model for something that can grow, and that this is happening in a bunch of other places, in a bunch of communities. We're not the only ones. So carry these conversations on in your home, in your communities, wherever you're at, wherever you can. Try them out, practice. I love the handouts that you ladies brought. Thank you so much. And thank you to American Public Square and Timmy Tassler. Thank you so much to the community for showing up, for the individuals who choose to run, and for what that means for us as a whole to have public servants represent us. Let's question that. Let's understand that. Let's have our voices heard. And just like me, I'm not that great at a lot of things, but I'm practicing, I'm trying, and I'm getting out there. And I think there's some improvements happening within me, and I'm not an anomaly. These things can happen with a community and with each other. So I've grown so much from this. I encourage you guys all to connect with each other, to connect with the community center, and to connect even with a hobby, a group that maybe doesn't talk about these things, but just gets you together. And I think those are some of the ways that we begin to practice and exercise the civil discourse. Yeah, a whole bunch of good stuff. Yep, kid friendly. We've got a good amount of programming on our website, the Parkville Living Center. So if you are in this area, check it out and stop on by. Thank you very much. Thank you.